We are delighted to welcome back Sam Sullivan, a pivotal figure in our local municipality. He began his career in public service in 1993, serving for 12 years as city councillor before his influential tenure as 38th Mayor of Vancouver from 2005 to 2008. After 15 years in municipal politics, Mr. Sullivan won an electoral seat under today's BC United Party, formerly the BC Liberals, in the electoral district of Vancouver False Creek. From here, he served as MLA for 7 years. Sam has been recognized nationally, being invested as a member of the Order of Canada. After a skiing accident at age 19, leaving him paralyzed, Sam's commitment to disability advocacy spurred the creation of several non-for-profits, including his own foundation. These efforts have raised over $20 million and served over 10,000 people with disabilities. Quite an achievement. As mayor, Sam introduced the Eco-Density Initiative and Project Civil City, targeting urban sustainability and public disorder respectively. His administration also faced challenges like the civil strike and controversies around public safety and crime. Today we're going to explore Sam's views on homelessness, the drug crisis, and safe supply. We're going to talk about Mayor Ken Sim and the governing ABC Party, and sweeping changes in housing and legislation by the BC NDP. Sam, it's great to have you on Coastal Front. Welcome once again.
Great to be here again. Thanks for having me.
Sam, you mentioned to me just a moment ago before we started filming that you've started a think tank, and this think tank is focusing on a variety of topics, including the downtown Eastside, urban planning, the woke attacks against BC's history and culture. You're reviving the Chinook jargon, and you're also taking minutes from Vancouver City Council and moving those onto a digital platform so all of us can read them, because they were originally just handwritten in archives. So that's really neat, and if we get time for some of those latter ones, we'd love to get to that. But let's start with the downtown East Side. I think you've got a story you'd like to start with to help tell us a little bit about what we know how terrible and miserable the downtown East Side is today, but how did we get here?
Yeah. Thanks for that. That I really have thought about it a lot. And I decided to do some archival work to try to figure out where did this come from. Because when I was a young guy and teenager, we'd never heard this word. The downtown East Side that we now call it was a very healthy neighborhood. I used to take the bus down to Columbia and Hastings, and I had karate lessons right on Columbia and Hastings. It was Doug Jung. He was the member of parliament. That was his office. He had a law firm, and in the front was his karate studio. So a bunch of us would go there, and never had a problem. I worked in the spaghetti factory at night, and I would walk down Hastings Street and down that whole area. It was a great place, very healthy, lots of healthy businesses. Once in a while there would be a little shady area and you'd see some people staggering around, and I said, what was that? And well, that was called Skid Row. That's what it told me. And I said, where is Skid Row? And they said, well, we don't really know where it is, but you know where when you're in it, and there was occasionally some bars that would be and some of the residential hotels where some of the old timers would be. Anyway, so I used to, after that, this word came up. Did a little Google search. When did that word come up? Well, there was this planning document in late 60s where they came up with this word, but it wasn't really until 1973. Now, 1973 is important because that was the year that Team got elected. And Team was really a revolution. And I love Team. I love everybody in Team. However, what they did was not good. They really there was a guy named Peter Davies. He was social planner, City Hall, and he applied for a LIP grant from the Trudeau social justice grant program, and they got 10 people on it. Now, one of the first people that worked in there was his daughter, Libby Davies. And then they did hire Bruce Erickson, who became a city councillor. He was what he would call a reformed alcoholic, and they were both working then to try to help prevent gentrification. It was really there was a lot of Marxists that were involved in helping them with their strategy, and I guess it was Bruce and Libby went to the Patricia Hotel, and they were trying to figure out how to get more staff on, and a woman named Jean Swanson was serving them and said, "Oh, I could do that job." And so they hired her on, you know. So it's interesting that all three of them became city councillors.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess Bruce Erickson had a highly publicized death threat. And at that point, the city staff said, "Oh my God, these people are all on city payroll. This is embarrassing. You know, we got to do something, and we got to get them out of there." So they quickly established a nonprofit group. The legal department did, and the legal department said, "Okay, we've got it all done. We don't know what to call it." And so they said, "Call it the Downtown Eastside Residents Association." It's a name that we're promoting. We want to see this as a separate, standalone community. Maybe we can, use this as a utopia, a Marxist utopia, I guess it would be. So eventually, so that at the same time, right around that time, team came up with their new plan for Vancouver, and March 17 actually, that was the date. Good newspaper article that covers that. The main thing, they wanted to stop any more West Ends. They wanted to stop any loss of single-family homes. They wanted growth to happen outside of the city. And they really wanted to put the brakes on growth. Now, anybody with a half a brain in economics would see what that's going to do is dramatically increase house prices.
Mm-hmm.
Stop the West End, stop density, preserve single-family homes, force growth outside of the city. This goes against economics.
Right.
So at the same time, they were really upset about, well, there was two things going on. There was a lot of these people lived in neighborhoods with big single-family homes. And at that time, the free market was working in that anybody with a low income could live anywhere in the city. There was something called rooming houses. And generally, the people who owned rooming houses were mostly older women, single. They had a little bit less of an opportunity to make income. So they would say, "Okay, I need some income," and they would start renting out their empty bedrooms. And what they had to do was once a day, make a communal meal for everybody. So there was a lot of low-income people. They could live anywhere. Shaughnessy was almost, you could say, a low-income neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah, actually, when I got elected, 1993, one of the things that I had to do in 1994 was shut down one of the last rooming houses in Shaughnessy. Shaughnessy was 30%, first Shaughnessy, 30% rooming houses or facilities, like hospital facilities. All those mansions were, low income. Now, at that time, the woman came to the council, older woman. She said, "Look, I live in this mansion. There's 21 of us. I love it. Me and Coco, my dog, we love walking around Shaughnessy every morning. We just can't believe our good luck. And you're going to close us down. All of us are former secretaries. We used to work downtown. We made this downtown work. We love our place. Why do we have to leave? And, you're going to replace us with a husband and wife and 2 kids. 21 of us, plus the landladies, are going to be out." And I asked Mayor Owen, what is this all about? And he said, "No, it was a unanimous vote. We've got to We got to shut these down, you know. And so there was a big effort. It was a counterculture movement at that time. And they wanted to have power to the people. The people should define their neighborhood. And our neighborhood is single family. We want to bring back the sanctity, not that it was ever there, but the sanctity of the single family neighborhood. The only people that should be living here are single families, you know, not these low-income people. So between the 1973 and 1986, almost 90% of the rooming houses in Vancouver was shut down. And they did that, there was no fanfare. You can't find anything in the newspapers about it. But what happened was, they said these are businesses. And you can't have businesses in the single-family neighborhoods. You know, like when I was a kid, we had what they called Chinese stores, probably not politically correct, but mostly Chinese people.
Like corner convenience stores.
Corner convenience stores in the middle of the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
There were little businesses all over the place. And the planners hate that. They like it to be clean, you know. The only people that should live in residential are residential people, you know. And you got to move all the businesses to
centralized locations.
Yeah, or the streets, you know, the commercial streets. So, and so what happened was, if you had a business in the single-family neighborhoods and you didn't operate it if it shut down for 30 days, you couldn't reopen. And that's how all those stores got shut down. No fanfare. It was a death of 1,000 cuts.
Right.
No one really noticed it too much.
Yeah.
All the rooming houses started to disappear one by one. And, I wish I could, if there's any senior planner or planner who knows what was going on 50 years ago, I can't seem to get the information. It's a little bit murky and trying to figure out what's going on. But at the same time they were shutting down rooming houses, they were making it really easy to keep low-income housing in this new neighborhood called the downtown Eastside. And they had actually created a whole lobby group to defend the downtown Eastside. And that's when the word started to be used. So bit by bit, all of these rooming houses started to disappear. And there used to be these residential hotels downtown. And the people from that day tell me they were almost always empty, maybe 20-30% occupancy. And I guess...
what we would call today an SRO?
SRO, yeah.
Single residency.
Yeah, well,
single,
okay.
What do they call it? What does that stand for again? Single...
Well, remember, there's two types of SROs. One is a rooming house.
Okay.
And one is a residential hotel. Rooming houses were in single-family homes areas, and the residential hotels were mostly in the area we now call downtown Eastside, but they were all over. They were able to shut them down, but kept the ones in the downtown Eastside going.
Okay.
And I would always ask the staff and advocates, where did the downtown Eastside come from? They said, no, it's just a confluence of different forces. The fact that there's good transit, it's near a port, it's near the downtown. And I said, but there are other places that have good transit and are near the port and are downtown, whatever. Why that place, Well, it's just happened by nature, And I now know that's not true. Today, if you have an SRO in a single-family home, you have to shut it down. If you have an SRO in the downtown Eastside, you're forced to keep it open at the pain of paying a $230,000 per room fine. If you got an SRO in the downtown Eastside, you pay, and you want to change it, do some other use, $230,000 per room.
Wow.
Fine. Doesn't that sound like some sort of engineering going on there?
It sure does, yeah.
Okay, so shut down all the low-income housing, nice neighborhoods, good houses, really difficult for drug dealers to access.
Yeah.
The landladies were really strict. There's good articles in the old newspapers, the Province and the Sun from the 40s, 30s, 50s, said you do not want to be a tenant in a rooming house in a single-family neighborhood and not have a job. The landlady will persecute you She will harass you. There will be World War III if that happens. And everybody was, she doesn't want any bad neighbors. She wants to, keep people so they can pay the rent.
Yeah, sure.
So, and what would happen, I did read some comments. There was interesting articles on these rooming houses, and people said, yeah, I used to live in a rooming house, and there was always this guy named Gus, and he was always about to fall off the wagon. And we knew that if he ever did, it would be World War III. The landlady would be, it would be miserable for everybody. So everybody agreed that if they ever saw Gus not up by 8:30 in the morning, they'd go in there and get him up. And, if they ever saw him drinking, they would have a good talk to him and draw him back off the ledge,
Mm-hmm.
So the free market worked. It was a really interesting dynamic. There was a community that was created, and there was motivations, incentives.
Right.
The landlady wanted to be a good neighbor, didn't want anybody to not pay their bills, wanted everybody to look after their place. So that all got destroyed. Government policy. And I used to say, and so the person, Judy Graves, who did the very first count of homelessness, 1990, she said, she went around, people were freaked out. I don't know, you're probably too young, but do you remember when homeless people started in Vancouver? You're too young for that. Anyways, old guys like me can tell you, we were shocked. We couldn't believe it. Homeless people in Vancouver? How
Really?
could that be? How could that be? 1990, they were so, shocked and embarrassed by it all. They
That was the first homeless count then?
1990, yeah.
What was the number? You remember?
Very small, dozens.
Couple hundred?
Dozens.
Dozens.
Yeah. Maybe I'll find that out.
Yeah, yeah.
It'd be interesting to know. Anyways, Judy Graves, well, it pretty much could be done by one person.
Right.
Judy did it.
Yeah.
And she asked the people, why are you here? Well, my rooming house in Mount Pleasant got shut down.
Wow.
My rooming house in Kerrisdale got shut down. My rooming house in Kitsilano got shut down. That was the answer they gave. The city was complicit, whether intentionally or not, in creating homelessness in Vancouver.
Wow.
I was shocked. And this took a lot of efforts, me going down to the archives. What was going on? Like, where were these rooming houses going? And where would they go? Like, did anybody think we're shutting down these rooming houses?
Yeah.
I wonder where they're going to go.
Where those people are going to live. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to go somewhere.
Somebody must have thought that. And somebody probably saw empty residential hotels.
Right.
100-year-old hotels that were dilapidated and were ready to be recycled as the market would want. That's what happens when things get too old and rickety. They recycle them and they new business. And the downtown needed to expand. It was trying to expand down. And then I started reading these other things about, there was two buildings that were a big problem. The Holden building, right beside, not too far from Victory Square, and the Ford building, right on Main and Hastings. These were full of businesses, active, healthy businesses. And they were basically both sides, they were poles of the downtown Eastside. And you had Woodward's, you had the Army, Navy. But these two companies were a problem for the utopianists that wanted to create this new utopia, the Marxist utopia of the downtown Eastside. And so somehow they convinced the governments to buy these buildings, get rid of the businesses, and turn them into low-income housing. That really was a blow to the healthy businesses of the area.
And this would have been what time, roughly?
Late 70s, 80s.
Okay.
Yeah. and then from there on, it was just converting healthy businesses into low-income housing. And so it was, I guess you could say the single-family homeowners were happy to get low-income people out of their neighborhood.
Right.
The left was happy to have their own utopia that they were going to create. And, all the social workers that would live there and all the new social housing that would be
Right.
supporting the whole ecology of that. So this is
This is the history.
This is the history, and at the same.
And you've done this research over what period of time here, Sam?
It took me a couple of years.
Okay.
And I'm still not finished. I mean,
and
there's a lot of questions.
I mean, you're spanning over a number of decades. Do you feel this was orchestrated in any event, or do you think it was almost like a couple of convenient decisions were made back to back, which caused this to happen with not really any intention? What's your view?
When there is a confluence of interests, conspiracies are not required.
Right.
So, single-family home owners wanted them out.
Yeah.
There was a receptive ideology, neighborhood power, give power to the people. There was a counterculture movement.
Yeah.
Anti-free market, these free market guys that were keeping the low-income people in these neighborhoods,
Yeah.
And since that 1970s, the population in the single-family neighborhoods, like almost 70-80% of the whole city's residential land, have gone down every decade. Imagine, 80%, 70% of our residential land has lost population over 50 years,
right,
while we have a housing crisis.
Yeah, sure.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, well, we've got some great questions to go into that, but let me ask you this. So we recently had Melissa Lee, who is the CEO for the Chinese Canadian Museum, who came on, and she talked about, in our conversation, she talked about being 7 years old and having her mom drop her off in front of the bakery in Chinatown, where her mom liked to buy some baked goods.
Yeah.
Because her mom would drive around trying to find parking, and her mom had no concerns about dropping her 7-year-old daughter off in front of the bakery.
Absolutely.
This is probably, I don't know how old Melissa is, but I'm going to assume like the early 1980s, perhaps, somewhere around that range. Carol Lee has also talked about the massive, terrible change that's happened in downtown Eastside that's affected Chinatown, of course, because they're almost one and the same in the area. So my question to you is, and you've talked about, how when you were young, hearing about homelessness for the first time. So you've given a good story. It seems very logical that this is the path we've taken. Now, myself, I'm 49 years old, and I grew up in the island, but my family was all here, so we traveled to Vancouver regularly, and I never really remember seeing the downtown Eastside to what it's like today. My grandfather, who's still alive today, just celebrated his 100th birthday. He used to go see my grandmother, who worked at Royal Bank on the corner of Carroll and Hastings.
That was the head bank of British Columbia and Yukon. Jimmy Pattison had to go to the Royal Bank on Main and Hastings to get all his loans.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for that.
This was like the
center. And now this is like
world.
The epicenter of like the tragedy that the downtown Eastside is known for today. So my question to you is, by the time we got to, say, the mid-90s, was where we're at today now inevitable? Or have there been other poor choices made by municipal or provincial government? Because in my view, even what you've seen today at the downtown Eastside, and I think the sort of pinnacle of this was just before Ken Sim came in as mayor, where we had like a massive tent city that was like 3 blocks long. Was like that was like the peak of, it's probably still there, but it's just not so obvious compared to just even 10 years ago, Sam. So do you feel like, from what you've researched so far, the path was now set to the inevitable that we're at today? Or do you think there's been more poor decisions made along the way in the last 2 decades that have caused this?
Terrible. Well, the main thing is the governments have just gone with the narrative. Like it was 2014, they put in a new policy that you actually had to, if you owned a building and you had a building, you had to make it social housing. 60%. You wouldn't have got any residential there. It has to be majority social housing. So not only, this is what we call it social justice zoning, or even stigma zoning, like the government tries to tell us not to stigmatize people, and then they force everybody into one area, with
Right.
low incomes and a certain medical status.
Yeah.
This is a ghetto that was created by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason the downtown Eastside exists today is because enough people want it to exist.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very easy to not have it. It's a few thousand people.
Yeah.
5 million people in the province. There's a lot of interests, and I, like I say, if there's mutually convergent interests, you don't need a intentional, you don't need any conspiracy to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It will happen. So I unfortunately, we had a guy named Gerald Sutton Brown who was the chief planner of the city. He created the West End. He did all the stuff. He made sure that we never had a congregation of any kind of ghetto, rich or poor.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted all different incomes to be able to live in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he succeeded. The first thing team did when they got elected was they fired him. Didn't even wait till they were taken office. They fired him and created the utopia, the let 100 flowers bloom,
I've had guests like Mark Tyndall and Dr. Julian Summers on. We've had, obviously, Ken Sin before he became mayor. And all of these people have kind of coined in on their proposed solutions. Maybe not so much Ken. He actually, I thought, was quite practical in saying that it's such a massive problem. He doesn't have a fix overnight, which I really respected. Because a lot of people come in here and they actually promote that they've got some fix. Mm-hmm. It's now 2024. If you look at the death by illicit drugs statistics by the BC Coroner's Service, it just keeps getting higher. It's actually astonishing. Like, I actually think to myself, not to sound very insensitive to this, but it's like, how do we even have more people to die from this? I mean, it's just like it's just they're in the thousands, of course. I think we're breaching close to 3,000 now, somewhere it's between the 2,000 and 3,000 range, versus like, again, 10 years ago it was only in the hundreds, or small hundreds. So, Sam, do you have any strong views on what has to happen to turn this ship around? Yeah,
well, two things. We need to liberalize the zoning. We need to relax the zoning. We got to stop this rigid anti-free market policy. Allow more people to have more different types of housing all over the city. And then we got to stop concentrating people into one area.
Well, that's Dr. Julian Summers' sort of thesis. He's a big believer in not having these people concentrate. Because I actually said, well, maybe we should revive like Riverside Hospital and start to institutionalize these people. And I don't necessarily agree with his points, but he said no. His view is that what we need to do is get these people back into the community around people who are working. And going back to what you were talking about, what was happening with these homes in First Shaughnessy. Yeah. I get these people who, at least those who have the capacity to work if they're in that environment. But I imagine that part of the problem that we're seeing is these people have no inspiration around them.
Yeah, no, it's a harm production policy.
Harm production policy. Wow, I like that.
You want to concentrate people. So what you'll find, there's these fights between the harm reduction and recovery. What happens is, no matter what type of treatment you're going for, if you are in a concentrated environment, it'll get worse. Every number will be worse.
Right.
By simply, deconcentrating, everything gets better. Mm-hmm. People start being normal. So I'm working with these guys in Switzerland who shut down their version of the downtown Eastside.
Okay.
20,000 homeless drug addicts in Zurich, and then the Bern was a terrible one as well. I got the two guys that shut it down. They disperse the population. Then they asked me, well, what's going on with you guys? Like, what is your technique? And I said, well, we take all of the troubled people, low-income people with mental illness, addiction, and we put them in one little tiny neighborhood. And they were shocked. Like, how do you get away with that? Like, that sounds like cruelty. Like, who would ever, I've never heard anybody actually recommend putting all these people together and creating chaos, and that's going to be somehow good for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, we've now got a new policy where we've got 5 buildings and basically 500 drug addicts, and we're putting them all one building, one by one, 5 outside of the downtown Eastside. You mean the whole building's drug addicts? I said, yeah, and they got a safe injection site and all that stuff. I said, that is equally outrageous, ludicrous. Like, you put these people in one building? Yeah, that's what we do, and we call it like progressive. Like, people brag about it like they're somehow good,
Yeah.
They said, that's unbelievable. And I said, what is the optimal number of drug addicts per building would you recommend? And he said, absolutely no more than 1. 1 drug addict per building, no more. You get 2, you're in trouble. You're asking for trouble. And that's what they do in Switzerland. Every building has one unit. There are agencies that have these, and they will put a person in there, and they say it's amazing, like they get surrounded by normal people.
Mm-hmm.
They like it, and they somehow start to act like normal people.
Right.
But the moment you put them in surrounded by chaos, they start adopting chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they said it's just, it's quite, it's not smart. You don't have to be too smart to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't concentrate people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to Switzerland soon, and we're going to look at how they did it. And
Yeah. Fascinating.
Vancouver has this idea that we keep making stuff up on our own. And
Yeah.
I
Let's
thought,
learn from.
maybe we should go to someone who actually did it.
Yeah.
And so I did ask them, I said, what do you attribute your success to? And he said, harm reduction and the 4 pillars approach. I said, are you serious? Like, every time we do that, things get worse.
Right.
And when you do it, things get better. And he said, well, why would that be, I wonder? And then they said, well, you did have your big battle, did you, between the 2 bitterly opposed factions of harm reduction? I said, I didn't know there was factions. Isn't harm reduction all the same thing? I said, oh no, it's very deeply divided.
Really?
And then I explained to them what ours is, and they said, wow, okay, I understand. The faction that lost in Switzerland won in Vancouver. They have a completely different version of harm reduction. They say it's not just it's not a series of techniques to tick the box, methadone, heroin, needle exchange, tick, tick, tick. No, it's you have to also be committed to undoing the harm that's already been established. It's not just ticking off a box.
Mm-hmm.
You need people to live lives of dignity and agency. These are all human beings. They all went to schools just like ours. They all played sports. They all lived in homes kind of like ours. And these are not, Martians. These are not aliens.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that are normal people.
Yeah.
That have now been driven into this by cruel policies.
Mm.
So the other thing I wanted to add to that is, I was always told, when I would ask the staff or the advocates, how do we get these people out of here? And they said, that's such an awful question to ask. These people want to be here. They like being here. They're a community. You're disrespecting the fact that these people live in a community and this is where they want to be. And I don't want to do that. Recently, they did some polls. More than 80% of the people who live there want to live somewhere else. And I mentioned that to one of the advocates. He said, that's not true. And I said, have you ever asked them if they like living there? No, I guess I haven't, but I assume they, we provide good services, and where could they get these kinds of benefits, and so it turns out that the people do not want to live there.
Mm-hmm.
Where they want to live is in dispersed housing, and they don't want to live in buildings, social housing buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So my solution that I'm coming to is we got to start putting regular folks into those buildings in the downtown Eastside.
Mm-hmm.
Start to, and as soon as people move out, we got to find out, where do you really want to live? Like I talked to one guy, he said, if I really could be where I want to be, it'd be White Rock. My mom lives there, my brother's there, he's got a job for me, but they don't have social housing there.
Yeah.
So I have to live in the downtown Eastside.
Well, this is what Dr. Julian Summers has talked about. He actually said that when they did their his surveys, they found that actually a large majority of the people living in the downtown Eastside don't come from Vancouver. They're actually from other parts of the province.
Exactly,
and the
too.
place they would love to go to is back to Prince George, back to Nanaimo,
Yes,
back to Victoria, back to Kelowna, back to
Yep.
Nelson. I also love the idea because if you think about the economics of the drug pusher, the drug dealers who thrive off this environment, if they're all concentrated in close proximity to each other, it makes a very efficient market for you to sell to. But if you actually disperse these people, especially your analogy of having one drug addict in like each building, it becomes economically very difficult to start selling your drugs to all those places. Absolutely. And so therefore it becomes less appealing to be going out to different jurisdictions to try and sell your drugs when you've got a buyer of one.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just simple economics, right?
Yeah, no, the areas of the downtown east are run by criminal gangs.
They are, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they know, the staff know which gang is running which place. This is what's happening in our city. It's, Canada's broken.
Sam, I do want to spend a few minutes talking about municipal and provincial government and some of the more recent initiatives that have happened. I'm going to start with provincial government. Bill 44, which was written and passed by the current BC NDP government in November of 2023, will allow for increased maximum densities to create what they describe as small-scale multi-unit housing. In short, basically every single lot that's zoned single-family in the province of BC will immediately qualify to have a 4 and in some cases 6 unit building built on top of it without any consultation or consideration by local government. This bill is anticipated to have a sweeping impact across our province, the likes that we haven't seen since the 1960s to 80s with the Vancouver specials that were allowed to be built en masse, that we still see many of them in East Vancouver and some of it Westside Vancouver. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, what's your take on this policy by the BC NDP? Do you like it, don't like it? Any thought? And do you think there are any unintended consequences to come from this?
Well, I don't like it. It's another central planner solution. Central planning has created all these problems. They've done terrible things when you think what they're doing to young lives, the destruction of young lives, the people that have had to put off children, the real the stress on people's lives as they try to pay these costs of housing. And it's all created by the central planners. And now we're going to have the central planners give us the answer, Well, these fourplexes, they're going to be built on the same kind of floor plate of the single-family homes, which has this front lawn and, back lawn and whatever. And they all have stairs, Okay, so you're asking the old folks who live, my mother, we had 7 people in the house, 5 kids, 2 parents. She's by herself now in a big house. If she was to move into one of those who have stairs, she's 93. Do you think that's a good thing to ask her to do? So the market has solutions. Why don't you stop giving these central planner utopian planning solutions? The market knows what people want. Let the market figure it out. Get out of the way. Stop this zoning, rigid, central planner, Soviet-style definition of our city. And let's let the market start to do it like it used to when things worked well, when we didn't have homelessness, when we had healthy communities, I think that's personally where I think we should go.
Okay. Well, this leads into my next question, which is going now to municipal government. We both know Ken Sim. He's now been mayor for 17 months with what often people refer to as a supermajority. I mean, he basically can pass virtually anything he wants with his party today. So a couple of questions. I guess my first question is, do you have any take on how he's doing right now?
Well, I think it's really hard for him because I had, 70 years of history. I had the NPA. I had George Puel as my coach, mentor, and Philip Owen, and, these old guys that just knew so well how to manage a city. They don't have any access to that stuff. They're all making it up. And
because their team is so they're so new.
Yeah, they just don't have the history, and it must be very hard to, like this whole tax thing. There's an ancient dance that goes on. It's a very, very formulaic. It's so predictable. What happens is in late fall or early January, February, the staff comes up with this outrageous tax number, and everybody freaks out, and the council comes riding over the horizon and to the rescue and gets it, hey, it was just to keep things normal, we're going to need a 7.1% tax increase. Everybody freaks out. The council starts cutting. Good news, we got it back to 3.9. Everybody goes, wow, 3.9, that's way better than that. Now, if the city staff had not given the 7.1 and they had just announced 3.9, the council would be crucified,
Right.
But this is dance. So the staff covers for the council, and then the council, fiddles it and gets it back down. So when they said, the staff were saying 10.7%, I said, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. That the council will figure it out. No one would ever do a double-digit tax increase. It would be the first in history. It's not going to happen. Don't worry. It's under control. And then they said, no, it's been approved. I said, no. So I went home and I Googled it. It was approved. What? Don't they know the dance? They didn't do the dance. What's going on? They didn't have old guys that could tell them about this stuff. And, the staff say 10.7. They say, oh, well, that's okay. I guess we got to do it, So, things like that are hard for them. They don't have the background. And I didn't even know I didn't even know that how important it is to know how the dance goes and the rhythm and how city government works. And now we brought this guy, Alain Berthaud, former chief urban planner of the World Bank, and he's looking at Vancouver. Came in September for 9 days. And he said, look, the planners keep giving you qualitative things. Hey, we're going to do neighborliness, we're going to do sustainability and affordability, and the council freaks out and say, wow, that's fantastic, go make us proud. They didn't ever say what any quantitative numbers are. Planners
Right.
never give you a quantitative number. We're going to get the price income ratio down to 4. It's currently 13.
But isn't that what planners should do?
Yeah. Well, it's the council that has to tell them that.
Right.
So we've now got a little discipline program going. We're encouraging city councilors across the region. You need, first of all, number one principle, you need planners who know economics. There are so many planners in the region have never taken a single course in economics.
So
They
what's
have
their
no clue.
background?
They go to planning school. And up until, I guess, last year, you didn't have to take any course of economics. Like now, apparently, there is a course that includes economics. And so you could ask people at a planning meeting, how many have ever taken a course in economics? A few hands go up, So
Wow.
you need people who understand economics. Number two, you need to do quantitative, not qualitative goals. And then number three, you got to stop the Soviet-style master plan, 5-year plan. This is so Soviet and so
Yeah.
out of date. What you do is ongoing monitoring. We have cell phone data that will that will give you an immediate response as to how they travel. You need to keep your travel market, the job market, no more than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really blowing that. And the planners
Yeah.
have no discipline. They hey, they'll say to you, congestion is your friend, and they actually believe that by congesting things up, they can improve the city.
Wow.
It's quite remarkable.
Well, this is a good segue into a question I have. There are two types of people that work at City Hall, and a lot of listeners that maybe aren't so politically inclined don't realize this. We often, get frustrated with or mad at the politicians who are running our city or running our province or running our nation. But there are two types of people. They're the people who kind of come and go, guys like you and Ken, who basically get elected by the people and then get fired by the people if you didn't step aside. And generally those tenureships don't last very long. Then there's the people who are there day in, day out, in and after every election cycle. They're getting paid far more than the city councilor or the mayor, for especially the top people. And I'm talking about the city planner. I'm talking about the head of finance, the head of engineering. And these people are paid substantial incomes. They've got wonderful index to inflation and pensions afterwards. These are the bureaucrats that run City Hall. What are your thoughts of the influence they have in and how they make it either easier or harder for Ken and the ABC party right now to achieve their objectives?
Well, I love bureaucrats, actually. Good ones, smart ones. They are important to get the right ones and to have them properly paid. So I've got no problem with that. It's just when you get ideological ones that really are not connected with the reality of what needs to be done, and who are given these mushy qualitative things that they're going to do. But it's also has to be leadership from the political level. It's not rocket science what needs to be done. Quantitative, the staff can choose the quantitative goals if they want, because there's only a few that are important, and they know the ones that are important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of leadership and guidance. So what our think tank is doing is it's educating politicians, and we're trying to get a network of local politicians who will ask the question, oh, you're hiring a senior planner? What kind of background in economics does this person have? That's a great question to ask, because I want UBC students to realize that if they want to be ambitious, they want to get ahead in life, and they don't have economics, they're not getting anywhere.
Right.
We're going to stop them in their tracks. We're not allowing them into the C-suites.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to start advocating to their woke leaders, the people that are the heads of the schools. I want an economics course. I want to start learning how the city actually works, so I can keep prices, affordable. Like we have planners who say, well, we got everything right except for the price part. Hold on a sec. Price part is your job. That is planning. If you've done planning right, the prices will be in order.
Yeah.
That's not like an extra thing. That is the thing.
That is the thing. As we've learned over the last 7 years, the budget doesn't balance itself.
What a nightmare.
Yeah. Sam, to wrap this up for our listeners, your think tank is called
Global Civic Policy Society.
Global Civic Policy Society.
Yeah.
And is this where I can also find these archives that you've transferred into?
Transcribimus, yeah, you'll find it there, but we have a special website for that, transcribimus.ca.
Okay.
And you will find 1886 to getting on to 1901 now. All of the minutes typed out, searchable, and you can also read the handwriting too. We have both. They're available. You can check the work,
Yeah.
And we got 11 more years to do, and we need more volunteers. So if anybody out there want to take a commercial break and type in a few lines, like you do from your own home.
Really?
We've got a great network of 50 volunteers that have been typing in these things. They're just heroes,
And you were telling me you've covered quite a bit of ground already.
1886, 1901, we've got 6,000 pages.
That's incredible.
Just grunting away.
Do you have to be able to read scribe?
What's that?
Do you have to be able to read scribe?
Well, Thomas McGuigan is the main guy. He was a long-term guy, so you have to, you got to
Learn how to read his style?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty neat. Sam, I have one final question for you. Your take on, it's right now we're filming this, it's mid-April 2024. We have an election coming here, provincial election this year, scheduled for October. Could be sooner, but unlikely, I think. But there was a poll that just came out today by Research Co. Thanks, Reed. And basically, to summarize it, it was a sort of a poll provincial-wide on decided voters of who they would vote for if there was an election today. And the numbers are as follows. The BC NDP are currently leading by 45%, followed by the Conservative Party under John Rustad at 27%. Then the BC United are at 15%, so the former BC Liberals are at 15%. BC Greens are at 11%, and then there's 1% to 2% as other. So 45% BC NDP, 27% Conservative Party of BC, 15% are BC United, and 11% are the Green Party.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on these numbers?
So I guess would that be 35% for? If you put the
United Conservative
and the
Party of BC
together.
and the BC United, it would take
45%.
It would be 40. It would be
42%. 42, yeah.
Versus 45 for the BC NDP.
Yeah. Well, these are my former colleagues. Love them all, and John Rustad, former colleague. I was very surprised to see him be ejected. He's a solid guy.
Yeah, we've had him on here. He seemed great.
He's not a flake. He's not a nutcase.
I think anybody who listens to our interview we did with him would conclude that.
No, he's very solid.
Yeah.
And very aware of Indigenous issues.
Yeah.
He signed 400 agreements. He knows very well how to manage those relationships.
Yeah.
So, and I thought his tweet on climate change was pretty good,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's not controversial for me. People that are pragmatic about environmental issues, you see these countries around the world like Germany commit economic suicide. Nuts. We're going to commit suicide for what?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I look at things like greenhouse gases, the history of 7,000, it used to be 7,000 parts per million when you had the very first complex life, and it's gone to 5,000, 6,000, 4,000, 1,200, and we're now to 415, like less than 5% of the original amount of carbon dioxide we had. So we're not going to die if carbon dioxide goes up a little bit to, it was 1,200 just a few million years ago, when we didn't have ice on the north and south poles. I mean, life was doing pretty good, So I don't get the hysteria stuff, but I know it's people love being hysterical about this stuff, but
mm-hmm. But do you have any take on this poll? I mean, I know polls can often be wrong, but that's where they rank right now. I mean, I think what most people would take away from this, if they hadn't seen this before, is the amazingly that the Conservative Party of BC, which literally has John and I forget the other fellow's name. Bruce. I mean, two MLAs that weren't even elected under that party. They were elected under BC United and kind of, crossed the floor into this old party that's been around forever. Meanwhile, Kevin Falcon and BC United are floundering. So any thoughts there?
Well, it just shows you that there is an appetite for change. I think that a lot of it is people are fed up with the woke stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big undercurrent that, you try to be polite, like British Columbians are very polite, and when they accuse you of being racist and all sorts of stuff, you want to take them seriously. Am I a racist? I better check my... And what a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
And so we've been taken over by this woke cult, basically. And we need to start fighting back, and I think about my grandfather who took bullets and shrapnel in his face, and he got trench foot and mustard gas. And I'm worried about somebody hurting my feelings. Like, this guy took it for British Columbia. We've had this amazing province. We score on highest on all levels of human well-being in the whole world.
Right.
And we got these people telling us we're a bunch of, this is a crazy, terrible place built on a crime. God, no. This is a wonderful place.
Yeah.
And we got to get our children proud of it, because when you tell your children that we're built on a crime, that it's a terrible place, what do you think they're going to do? What are they going to do with that information? They're going to lose confidence in our institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's our institutions that keep us civilized, and the fact that we haven't had a war for over 100 years.
Yeah.
Why is there 180 wars going on at this time today around the world, and we haven't had a war in over 100 years? The woke people are leading down a very dangerous path, and somebody better stop them. We need to stand up and bring back some sanity to this province. And I can see people wanting to go with BC Conservatives. They feel, woke light or woke, maybe we throw it out,
Mm-hmm. Well said.
So,
yeah. Sam Sullivan, former mayor of Vancouver, city councillor, and advocate for people with disabilities. I mean, you just do such great work here. This has been a great conversation, just like last time. I enjoy having you come in. So thank you for coming in for Coastal Front today, Sam, and look forward to having you again sometime soon.
Thanks for having me.